My name is Scott Graham, and welcome to the world of Untitled Multiplayer Sandbox game. Um, Obviously, eventually this game will have a name, but it's early in development, and so there isn't a name yet. But when the name is finally decided upon, if you want to follow me on Twitter at Scott Starlight, I'm sure I'll be announcing the game name there. And just a little disclaimer, I'm going to be trying really hard to make sure that, everything that I talk about today will be in the final game, but, we all know how game development is here as game developers and many things change. So we'll just see how those things go. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Philly. I like to draw. Here's some of my art on the right here. I've worked as a software engineer in the area for a little under 3 years, and I left about a year ago to go pursue game development, which is what I'm doing now. I've been working on this specific project for about 7 months. And before that, I was working on an RPG. You can see a little bit of some gameplay in the bottom left here. But just due to the interest of time, I ended up switching projects to the project I'm working on now. Some of it's still on my Twitter, but I'd like to finish it one day. But for now, I think I've made a better decision in moving on. So this is the game that I am working on right now, and I'm going to play a little bit of gameplay. So this is some sped up gameplay of a fantasy sandbox multiplayer game that I'm working on. So the goal for this building system was for it to be as easy and intuitive and fast as possible for people to just get something up and looking nice. Everything works off of a grid so that it's easy to place things in a way that looks nice. You can see here that the roofs they automatically adjust to line up with each other so that everything looks nice. The walls also, here, I'll pause it really quick. The walls, these corners are automatically made when you're placing walls. And if you want to place windows, you can place them right into the walls and a little hole is cut out here. Same with the doors. So yeah, like I said, the goal was for the building to be fun and intuitive. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how exactly I did what I did. The development of the game is still continuing, but I'll just talk about, what I've done so far and how I did it. So the engine I'm using is Unity URP. I ended up going with URP just because I wanted to be playable on as many platforms as possible once the finished product is released. I've worked with different engines in the past, and personally, I just have a lot of fun working with Unity, so that's why I chose it. You definitely could have chosen a different engine for a project like this, but I think it's mostly about the tools rather than, opposite of that. It's mostly about the artist or the programmer, not about the tools. And I'm not using any Unity assets. I'm making everything myself, especially with programming. I like to be able to have a deep understanding of the things that I'm putting in the games so that I know how they work. Some of the art tools that I use are Blender, ZBrush Core. I wish I could afford regular ZBrush, but it's too expensive. Photoshop, XNormal for making normal maps. And at some point I might get Substance Painter because it's a really great tool, but haven't broke down on that one yet. So for the networking, I'm creating a custom scalable networking solution just with what C# already provides. There are a lot of different Unity networking solutions, and I'm just going to go a little bit into why I chose what I chose. I'm pretty far along with the networking so far. I know there was no example in the gameplay I just posted or that I just showed, but it's pretty far along so far. I've got replication over the network for the building, and the objects are stored in the database. So when you're building and then the server restarts, all the objects are still there. But anyway, so ML API is Unity's new official networking solution. Not too many people know about that, I don't think, but Unity just purchased, I think, the group that was working on ML API. But I decided against using it, even though it does seem like a good solution because it's not production ready yet. I also decided against Mirror. Mirror is another pretty popular Unity networking solution, but decided against it because it makes too many assumptions, and I will get back to that. I also decided against Photon for a similar reason. Also, if you look at the pricing for Photon, it's pretty expensive. When I talk about assumptions, I mean that the goal with networking is to send as little networking information as possible. And the issue that I at least see with Mirror and Photon is that in an effort to be as simple as possible to implement, they send a lot of information that you might not actually need. And it's fine for small multiplayer games that are, around 30 players or less, but it doesn't scale upward. And so the thing with this game is that I would ideally like there to be a lot of people being able to play at the same time so that it really does feel like, a big world. And so I decided to go with my own networking solution, just using the things that C# already provides. Just a little bit of, I guess, so the world itself is going to have lore to it, even though most of the world will be created by the players through their buildings. Some examples, there will be, I'm not sure what the names will exactly be called yet, but for now I'm calling them celestials. They're these sort of godlike beings that reign over the world. And here's like a little messy ZBrush sculpt of one of the celestials that I'm working on. So for example, like she is the celestial of rebirth. And if you want to do certain things that are within her domain, you will have to make offerings to her. And there will all be other celestials like the celestial of justice, the celestial of conflict, things like that. And depending on the types of like magical skills you might want, you'll have to sort of make offerings to these beings. Another thing is that I'm planning on having it be so that the players are sort of like born into the world. The celestial of rebirth is kind of the first person they'll see in the world as they're born into it. And then they'll have what I'm imagining that they'll have a player that kind of acts as like their parent in a not a literal sense, but more of a role play sense. And the player is born as a child, and when they're a child, they have protection from PvP and other types of elements that new players are typically vulnerable to until they grow up into an adult. And then they'll have this partner player, quote unquote parent, that can kind of help them into the world as they're sort of navigating it as a new player. So some future features I'm planning for this game are, like I mentioned before, PvP, farming, land claim, and land takeover so that people can protect the land that they have, but also there are means by which people can steal each other's land. Massively multiplayer is a question mark because I know that is a big ask and I am trying my best to make it happen, but we'll just see how that goes. My goal is to have a pre-alpha of this released by the end of this year, and I'm just going to be trying my best to make that happen. A lot of you may be thinking, this seems a bit ambitious, buddy. Yes, that is absolutely true. But I'm just going to be trying my best, and I have, a timeline set out and goals that I'm trying to accomplish each month, and we'll just see how it goes. So with that, I will be taking some Q&A if we still have time. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'll be looking at that Q&A box to see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned earlier, so folks in the attendance, if you want to use the Q&A portion at the bottom to ask questions, please start to queue up. We're going to take about 3 to 5 minutes for questions. I'll get us started because I do have a couple of questions while we wait for folks in attendance. My first question, and I think I know the answer, but I'm still curious. You mentioned the ambition of the project. So do you have a team at the moment, or is this just you right now?
This is just all me, so I don't have a team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, that is super ambitious, but it is coming along really well so far. I know it's very early, but I'm really impressed, especially with you showed the building system, and I actually wanted to know if you could speak a little bit more to that. I kind of got a sense of how it fits into the overall game. I was curious, you said that big part of this is trying to make it easier for players to use, and I think that's a really ambitious but also adamant goal, and it seems to be coming along. So I'm curious about, what are like how it functions from the user end. What have you done to like make it a little bit easier, like because it seems very Lego like right now, with everything like snapping together almost like an auto tile system almost.
Yeah, and it's going to remain a bit Lego like, just for like I said, the ease of being able to build things. I had a few ideas in mind when I was, approaching creating this game, as far as building systems, and a lot of them just seemed a bit too complicated. Like they allowed for a lot of freedom, but in exchange they were very complicated and sort of hard for players to make things, but if they were more experienced with it, they'd be able to make things that were really impressive. But my concern is that new players would be really overwhelmed with a system that's too complicated. And so with this sort of snapping system, it seemed like it was a good way to make things really approachable.
Nice, cool. And a kind of a related question from Rob in the chat, because he can't use the Q&A section. Are you familiar with the program or game? Actually, I'm not personally not familiar with it. Townscaper. Your intent is different, but it started with building an audience by sharing in-progress GIFs to Twitter as features were added. So I guess the question is, are you familiar with Townscaper, and is that something you might consider for promotion as you go in development?
No, I've never heard of Townscaper, but I'll definitely check it out after this meeting. And yeah, I guess I do have a similar intent of like sharing in progress GIFs and stuff like that on my Twitter as I continue development.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because I think this is one of those things that showing has a lot of power with this idea. Taylor, who is also a panelist, is asking, what is or will be your inspiration for the lore and story perspectives, or lore and story aspects?
I mean, I have a lot of different inspirations. I mean, I um, but so I guess I'm drawing a bit from Greek mythology, in the sense that there are different types of gods, but aesthetically, a lot of the costuming and outfits that the characters will be able to wear is probably more so going to be coming from like 1100s Europe kind of thing. It's definitely a mix of different inspirations, and overall, it is a fantasy game, so it's not all going to be too tied to one specific historical area.
Cool. Another recommendation from Jason is to check out Wonderbox on Apple Arcade, which also has a similar modular system. I have one final question. I'll take another one from the audience if one comes in, but I do have one personal final question. Otherwise, because you mentioned that the plan is to have pre-alpha by the end of 2021. Does that mean you're intending to do some kind of early access system as you're developing the game, or what's the plans as you build it up toward a release?
Yeah, that's essentially what it will be. Is I will be continuing development on the game while I allow people to play with, the early version of the game.
Cool. Sounds good. And it sounds like a perfect model for this particular game, because that model works very well. Jason's also asking if you're looking currently for dev partners, or is the goal to keep solo at the moment?
I mean, so eventually, I know this isn't a project that can be, sustained its entire lifespan with just me, just when it comes to upkeeping servers and, all the other things that come along with that. So eventually I will be looking for people to work with. I'm not sure if I'm 100% in a place right now where I'm ready for that, but eventually, yes.
Cool. I agree 100% with everyone said, that this is shaping up to be very, very impressive. What you have so far is super cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing it as it progresses in development. That's really cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.